Hi, this is March 2016 and this is Paul Sawyer and this is my presentation for Richard Clement, and the task that we were given was about how to make this course more inclusive, and I've slightly widened that, and how to make any course theoretically more inclusive. The methodology is that I've taken the group of parents that I work with, and I'll explain that in a little more detail in a moment. I've taken that group of parents and I've tried to give them as a case study for developing a more inclusive learning process. First of all, I'm going to deal with the issues that they have, the specific issues that they have in terms of the learning process, and secondly I'm going to outline hopefully some methods that I could use, in some cases I have used, to try and make any training that we do with this group of parents as inclusive as possible. You'll have to forgive my cold, because I've got a severe case of man flu, and I'm coughing and spluttering, phlegming and so on. Okay, first of all, I'll explain a little bit about the background of the parents that I do work with, and that I will be working with, and that I hopefully will be giving this training to. It's part of I work for Scope, which is a charity organisation, and we've got lottery funding to work on what's called a face-to-face project. And the aim of that project is to train, or is to gather together, identify and train parents who have kids with disabilities, and who will ultimately be willing, after training from us, and this is where the training comes in, after training from us, will hopefully become befrienders to other parents who also have kids with disabilities and are struggling for various reasons. So as far as these purposes are, it has a twofold sort of objective. One is to train this group of parents, and so that they can do this befriending, that they can help other people in the same situations themselves, and secondly, and as importantly, that training process of the parents actually can empower them and give them confidence and give them transferable skills and so on. So that's the twofold objective of that course, and we have been working with it for the last few years. We've just got funding actually to do another 2 years to work with different cohorts of groups and hopefully organisations as well. So I have a specific need to train new groups of parents. As I say, to define the people who will receive the training, they're all got kids with disabilities, any type of disability, and any age, including adults as well. So the parents of these kids can be, one will be different ages, different backgrounds, different education achievements. Their kids will have different and differing disabilities, and they don't necessarily have to have even a diagnosis of that disability. So they'll just be that's what they will have in common. They will typically as well be from the same geographical area. They may not know each other. In some cases I've had where everyone in individual sort of small valley communities, every single person knew everything about the other person in that room. We're talking about sort of a dozen people at one time, typically over a 12-week training course for 1 day a week, although it does vary. And in the case of one particular group, they knew everything about them. They knew their families, they knew where they socialised, they knew everything else about them, and there were benefits and disadvantages to that. In some cases they don't know each other at all. Excuse me. Interestingly as well, they are all going to be volunteers. And I think that's a really important point. It's absolutely a fantastic thing about the project, that with all of the issues that they face as parents of kids with disabilities, and very often they have kids without disabilities as well. Very often they can be single parents and have other responsibilities with their own parents and so on and so on and so on. Is that they will help they will offer to help other people for no cost, and we can so they are volunteers and they don't have to be there, they don't have to be in that training. So that's I think an important point, and I'll return to that later. Many of them, not all, but many have dropped out of education fairly early on. Most of them haven't particularly been through informal education, although again some have, and they're all going to be in the same group. Typically they can be socially and geographically isolated themselves, and again, certainly in the environment and the communities with which I'm working, they very often have an extreme lack of faith in any kind of system, particularly the education system, which has probably failed them and is probably failing their kids as well. I mean, that's a generalisation, and that's not universally true, but they are really cheesed off usually with with the education system, both for them and for their kids, and also the help that their children get from the system. So again, that's an important point. They are going to be almost politically, with a small p, disillusioned, dissatisfied, disaffected. They're going to have therefore a lack of confidence. They almost, again, universally, it's Freudian slip there, universally will have a very hectic and involved and in many cases traumatic home life, which again I'll refer to later, makes attendance at any training course from a practical point of view very, very difficult for them. And yet, as I say, they still, they still will want to volunteer, which is amazing. Very often as well, typically but not always, they will have economic difficulties themselves. They won't be working, and they won't have a regular source of income, and so on. Okay, so that's more or less the background. I don't want to stereotype people too much, because the one thing I have found is you can have a group of people in one community and then go 5 miles down the road and it's completely different makeup, socially, age-wise, gender-wise, everything-wise. So it's again I'll return to this. That's why the training has to be flexible, because you're not going to know until you start, until you get the people together. How what the makeup will be, and therefore, to some extent, what type of training methods are going to suit. I mean, one thing I have found is that in getting the group of people together for the training lasts 2 or 3 times as long as the training itself. Because of the nature of the project, we don't just turn up one day and they're all there. You have to I don't know what the word is. You have to show, they have to trust you. You have to sort of recruit them. They have to believe in the process, and so on. Again, I'll come to this all later, but there are many. It's a very long process to get them in front of you, because of course they're volunteers and there's no statutory obligation for them to be there, like informal statutory education or whatever. And they're not. It's not part of the job like in other forms of education. So it's a long process to get them there. Okay. How can we make any more training with them more inclusive now? These are some of the ideas that I've had that I've already done, and that's the reading. Some of the things that Richard has sent has given me ideas of inclusivity, and this is I guess a first stab at making it even more inclusive than it possibly was. First of all, environment. Again, experience has taught me that the time and place of any training is really, really crucial, and you have to design it by them. You cannot just go in and say, we're holding it in such and such community centre on a Wednesday at 7 o'clock because that happens to suit me. You can't do that. It's a negotiation, and it's a lengthy and really involved part of the process, because if you get it wrong, no one will come, and you have to fit it round, as I referred to before, their hectic home lives. So it has to be, it has to fit in. For example, by definition, they've almost all have got kids in school, so it has to start after they drop the kids off. It has to finish before they have to go and leave them. A lot of them haven't got transport, community facilities, and unfortunately sort of under threat now. So you have to look at the place. Are they embarrassed to go in that place? Are they pleased to go in that place? I've actually held courses in pubs, for example. Because it's in one particular community, that was the centre of the community, so I held it there. But again, if you held it in a school, that's going to be too much associated with statutory education, which, as I said, may have failed them. So the time and place, that's one of the things about making more inclusive, is choosing the time and place and the advertising of that time and place very, very carefully, and include them in that process. Get them to choose if possible. And the environment itself, once they're in there, has to be really, really special. Food, lunch and so on, and coffees and biscuits and stuff are a really big part of it. They're not an incidental part, and I'm not being sort of facile here. It is a really big part of it, and it's the reason that a lot of them will initially come, because it's a chance for them to have something that they haven't sat down and have to make themselves, and they always make a big sort of fuss about doing it. And if I get the wrong type of sandwiches, it's a really big deal. And I'm not decrying that. It's a really important part of it. And the environment itself, by definition, and I'll come to this a bit later, by definition it must be confidential, because a lot of the things that they're talking about are extremely emotional, extremely confidential, and you have to have an environment where they feel free to talk. And again, I mentioned before that I was in a pub. That obviously didn't happen then. Even though it was a separated sort of room in a pub, it wasn't suitable for that. So the environment is important. I mentioned before that they're volunteers. Again, we can give some sort of expenses, for them to come to the courses, and we try and do that. That's part of the project. And again, that's really important. Although, again, sort of typically most of them would turn that down because they'd be sort of too embarrassed to take it. You have to, when we do the particular training that we do, I won't go into it all now. As I said, it's a 12-week course. It enables them to be befrienders, to help other people, and it's structured, formulated syllabus, I guess is the equivalent to a syllabus, and it includes things like listening skills and empathy for others and body language and all that type of stuff. But again, you have to break it down and say, right, today we're going to do this, and this, no more or less than that, so not to put them off. And you have to give that group, in order to be inclusive. Some of the people will be lacking in confidence greatly, but some of them will typically be sort of leaders in the community, and certainly in the disability community, and they're used to sort of telling others what to do. And again, that's not what this course is, and that's not what befriending is. So you have to both encourage others to participate and to discourage some from dominating the thing, and it's to dominating proceedings, and you have to do both of those things at once. You have to show them the practical and the emotional benefits of the learning process. In other words, you have to say what's in it for them. Our course is an accredited one. And for example, I always stress that if they did at any point think of going into work, particularly work with kids, particularly work with kids with disabilities, then successfully attaining this course will demonstrably benefit them, and they will achieve transferable skill. And as I said, it might be the first sort of qualification they've ever got or got for a long time. So we don't call it learning, because it might put them off. So I could talk about it sharing and training and so on. And again, the system is, a lot of them will have been compulsory sent on training courses in order to qualify for certain benefits and stuff like that, and they all hate training. you know, or the social worker sent me on parenting skills training or something, we had to go or we wouldn't get X, Y and Z. So they, of course, when it's done in that non-inclusive way, then they don't like it. So we've got to make ours not that. We have to involve the community in which they're going to serve as much as possible. You know, who they'll be helping after the training is finished anyway. A really good example of this is when we start the course and when we finish the when they've sort of graduated from the course, we always make it a big local thing, and we have a do with, you know, food again, and we invite the Lord Mayor or the councillor or some, you know, some big wigger, and then get it in the local paper and make a big thing of it, and that is really important to them. And again, I'm not decrying that. It's important, excuse me, to the project itself, and it's important to publicise the project, but it's important for them to be seen as actually achieving something, and to, you know, for them chance for them to dress up and have their to make a speech, you know, and to say what they've learned, and to have, you know, you give them a bunch of flowers or whatever, you know, that type of stuff, and their families will come, their mum will come, and it's a big thing. And again, you can't overstate the importance of that. So involving the community, involving their families, and, you know, above all, let them participate and encourage their skills. Even if they never befriend anyone, the biggest part of this course is they will have learned something. They will have shared something, and they will have learned something about themselves. Just one quick example, right, is that part of the course is if typically they will help someone who might have had a child with a disability, and that person may have just found out that their child has, you know, cerebral palsy or whatever it is, and you know, they don't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do. They might not have even heard of the you know, the thing that their kid has got. They certainly won't probably know the implications of what that is going to mean for them for the next 20 years. You know, how are they going to cope? What does it mean? Do the kids go to special school? Do they not? You know, all of those things. And you know, the befrienders would be going out to that people. So of course, therefore, we encourage them to talk about how they felt themselves when their child was first diagnosed. And in a lot of cases, you know,